All right. Welcome to Improv FAQ at Length, a show where we have longer conversations about topics about improv that have lots of questions surrounding them. And Gary Lehman, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yay!
So actually, the three of us are a troupe called Javelin, and that's kind of fun. I've thought about that off and on, that we were going to have a conversation as the three of us, and I miss you guys, miss playing with you guys.
Yeah, really miss playing with you guys.
It's been a while. My body has fully recovered since the last time we performed together. So,
So the topic of this episode is going to be Fuck World. Some people call it Crazy Town. It might go by other names that I'm unaware of. Do you guys know of any other names for it?
no,
Shitsville.
everyone just refers to it as Fucktown.
Yeah.
So I guess the conversation is one of the reasons we wanted to talk to Gary about it is because I think you have some unique perspective on it. And I think that the three of us also like to play in weird places and go to things that are a little less neat and tidy. And so where you draw the line on Fuck World, is it always a bad thing? Do you need it sometimes? What do you do when you're there? And all that stuff is on the table for conversation and just kind of like nailing down what it means to us and what good it is to even have a term for it. So let's start with that. Gary, how do you think about when people talk about Fuck World, what does that term mean to you?
When people talk to me about it, it's typically given a negative connotation. Like, I don't know, what do I do when the scene goes to Fuck World? How do I get out of Fuck World? It tends to be a negative. And I've always considered it a positive. Well, I mean, grounded, everything we do has to be grounded, right? There's certain bedrock principles of a scene. And the problem, right, like, the very essence of like why we call it Fuck World is that people feel lost and they think it's just Crazy Town. And that usually always happens because someone in the scene has gone to Fuck World within the first two lines instead of establishing the basics, right? Relationship, character, and then developing Fuck World. The issue usually means shit's gone crazy. I don't know what's going on. This is Fuck World. I don't like it.
Yeah, because it's pretty much like it's named Fuck World. I guess I don't have proof of this, but like it's like, oh fuck, or what the fuck,
or like
Fuck World.
God damn it, Jeremy. Like, why are we here?
Yeah, why are we doing this?
Right.
But
I knew where we were going until you said that, and now I'm uncomfortable.
Yeah,
right.
So but Gary, you're saying that like it's definitely something. If it happens right out the gate, is probably one of the trickier places to be because you don't have a lot else to. You got to do a lot of work immediately to frame things, or. Not get out of panic mode in order to make any use of it. If the first couple lines are, oh fuck.
Well, right, and that's usually because someone's trying to be funny or trying to be creative, or nervous and just says like whatever weird thing comes into their brain because they think it'll be interesting, and then what do you do with it? And so people tend to not like it. And when people talk to me about it, again, it's like, usually it's always like, how do I get out of it? How do I fix it? And I think the reason we all enjoy it and can play in it is because, A, we don't want to fix it. We want to dive into it and figure out this new world. That's the I mean, it's a fuck world because it doesn't follow reality, right? Like up is down and right is left, or whatever. But I always reframe it like this: you are coming at it from an internal actor point of view, right? I don't know what's going on. Reframe it as an audience point of view. Does the audience know what's going on? If you don't know what's going on, they certainly don't know what's going on, even if they have more headspace than we do. So I always say, hey, you can't, it's super hard to go to fuck world in the first 3 lines because you've not established anything that you can play off of. I don't know who you are. I don't know who I am. Where the hell are we? Why are you saying this weird shit? If you think about it from an audience standpoint, like, just start normal. And normal just is always what? Character, relationship. And I always treat it like a graph, right? Like, if you're going into fuck world, you have to take the audience with you. And so when you enter fuck world, the audience can follow you because they know who you are. They know who you are to each other, or maybe where you are. And then when you start twisting reality, they can understand it because they've seen the creation of it.
Yeah, you got to hold the audience's hand, and sometimes you have to hold like your scene partner's hand. It's
I that's something that's been a big theme to me in the last couple of years, is the audience being part of the show. I've just been thinking about it in a different way. It's like you're not doing this in a vacuum, and unlike scripted theater, it wasn't prepared to be delivered.
Yeah.
So the journey of sometimes I feel like it's maybe a separate conversation about like how to treat the audience, and whether or not to quote unquote hold their hand in the way that sometimes people are like you don't want to confuse them, like the audience are dumbasses, but it's not hold their hand in the sense that like we're all in this, including you. Everyone in this actual room is part of the experience of this show unfolding, and so the holding hand is not like condescending or like don't get lost, you dumbasses.
No. There's a difference between holding hands and going over and picking the person up and carrying them through the whole thing.
We don't need to be God on the beach.
No, it's that thing. We're even with object work and everything we're doing, we're asking the audience to suspend their disbelief. So with that in mind, we have to build this thing for them because they haven't been trained. They're not, right. Especially if they're a new audience who's never seen improv before. We have to show them like, hey, there's not going to be props, or we're not doing sketch. We're making this all up, and we're going to take our time, do it right, so you understand what we're doing, so you can see it as well. We have to make that connection. You got to know what's going on, your scene partner and the audience.
That's the fun part of fuck world, is you hold their hand at the beginning, establish the things that you need to establish so that the people on stage can function in a scenic way, and you hold the audience's hand, to use Bob's term, and then at some point you let them go. And like enjoy this new world while you're floating in it, because this is not, hey, we're at Applebee's scene, And then the other thing I like about fuck world is you can do anything in improv. Why would you want to sit in a chair and be at Applebee's in every scene?
Yeah,
it's so much more fun to be like a giant alien.
First of all, I don't know how Applebee's became the sponsor of improv, but every time someone ever mentions like a restaurant, it's like, the Applebee's scene. Yeah. It's like the Applebee's scene.
As a side note, I have now noticed over the last couple of years that if you say Chili's, the audience automatically laughs. I don't know why.
That's the new laugh line.
They're so sick of Applebee's.
They're so they're like, yeah. Even the audience is sick of Applebee's.
Yeah. Laugh lines like that are like I remember when it was like Groupon. It's like that Groupon really
everything was a Groupon.
Yeah. Oh, well,
hey,
I knew
did you
we
see
that?
That was so funny. That guy said Groupon for a skydiving. Poof, that's true.
Oh, that's great. I'm going to back pocket that. We're at a Chili's.
The other thing about fuck world is that I have issues with and conversations about with people is some people's literal hatred of it. Like,
oh yeah,
like if something veers outside of the norm, there are performers who are just like,
Yeah.
and just like, I'm done. And I'm like, what? Well, A, you shouldn't do that because it means you're not yes-anding, right?
or supportive.
Right.
I have a big weird idea. Please support it.
Yeah.
It's
And
your
even
job.
if it's just like being your character and being like, that's not how I would frame a pig. At least you're still there and you're not like glaring as the actor at me as your fellow actor that you've done something crazy that you don't want to do.
I really like that sentence that you use right there, that I feel, because that's usually the advice I give someone who's like, oh, every time I play with so-and-so, they just do this weird thing. And I'm like, that's awesome, because A, our job is to make big choices and they're doing it for you. So appreciate the gift. But B, like if you ever feel like I don't know what's going on, just make an I feel statement. And it always kind of like grounds at least your character, and it
Right.
usually provides an explanation or a justification after that. Like I feel in this situation blank, because a lot of times when you go to fuck world, it's situational. It's if you did a strong establishment, that's a callback from yesterday or whenever. If you make a strong establishment, cool. When fuck world happens, the I feel statement will justify everything and solidify your feelings and solidify that character and its place in this scene. So it's kind of like my self-defense when I'm like, I'm lost. So I feel lost, just push it, like lean into that feeling.
The other, well, it also is fuck world in particular heightens that sense of, I don't know what's going on for us on stage. And that is something, the feeling of like, I don't know what's going on is something you just get better with the more you do it. And fuck world's a great way to get used to like, I don't know what's going on, but I'm going to stay in it. I did a scene, like a year ago. And for whatever reason, I created a Cajun female character. I had this ridiculous Cajun accent. And I had a husband, and then this other person was like visiting. And it just started as a normal, like weird Cajun dinner scene. We learned that this third performer was visiting from like up north, and we got from there to there's a rift in the time-space continuum that only happens in Baton Rouge. And so a rift forms, and he crawls under an audience chair. He crawls under, this is Matt Schwartz, by the way, so a tiny person. Is able to crawl. I just want people to, like, he can crawl under a chair. He crawled under a chair and pops up on the other side of it and says, "What do I do now?" And I remember this distinctly because I was about to just answer him. And then I realized the reality of the scene, even though we're in fuck world, right, is that he had crawled through a wall. So I said, "How are we supposed to know you've crawled through a wall?" And the audience lost their fucking minds of like, oh, yeah, there was a rift in the wall and he crawled through it. Now he's on the other side. How are these people on stage going to see it? I've never gotten a bigger laugh for just saying what the facts were physically in that moment. And that's how you can use fuck world, is you create these weird things, but then still look at them or apply normal physics in that moment, and the audience can recognize that. I mean, it literally was one of those moments that stops a scene and you just have to wait for the audience to come back.
Laugh-wise.
And I don't... Laugh-wise, yeah. And I'm not talking about this from an ego, point of view, even though it was really fucking cool. But from a fuck world point of view, I mean, we literally were like, became three very odd people that were totally cool with rifts in the space-time continuum that only happen in Baton Rouge. But also we established who we were to each other, who our characters were, and then we played in that world, but still kind of like anchored it in particular ways.
Yeah. So that makes me think of Rachel Mason talks about head, heart, and X factor. And the X factor is it's basically these three styles of improv, head being what it sounds like, heady, heart being more emotionally and relationship acting driven, and X factor being like that spice of wild card. And she had these subcategories of X factor, which to me sounds a lot like fuck world, the way that we think about it, which is just that like it's unusual, unexpected, abnormal, and not so much like a no territory that you shouldn't be in. But the subcategories are malicious, unconscious, and conscious. And so I do imagine that in the conversation of fuck world, we have to talk about people or instances where things get taken to a dark or I guess inappropriate place maliciously, because that does happen. There's people who are controlling or just assholes. It's out there. So for the most part, we're talking about conscious and unconscious players that are doing this. Unconscious being people who just think very differently in a way that you're like, I don't see how you got from A to C on that right. in any way, because it's just not how my mind works. And usually those people are like, yeah, duh, space-time rift. and they're like, yeah. Man, I thought you guys are right there with me. And then the conscious people, which I think is another interesting angle on it, is that sometimes, like you said, Gary, we do a lot of normal stuff in improv, a lot of normal stuff. And it's really funny and theatrical and respectable, but at the same time, you have this opportunity of a free playground of imagination. So sometimes a conscious X factor or a conscious fuck world move is going to be to just go out there and make and mix it up, just because it's been too normal or predictable, and you want to keep things on their toes, or just see if you can get a little bit of like X factor in there. That's a conscientious move that can really help a show and people as players too.
A little extra spice.
And then for the malicious people, the answer is that we all hope that they can go through classes and get the education they need from teachers and responsible.
Yeah. Well, there's been so many times I've had a student like that who's like really difficult, and sometimes their heart's in the right place, but they're funny at work, and this is the kind of humor they enjoy. It's just, I don't know. I don't think it's a good sense of humor for group. It's unless everybody's on that same page. Because they're in it for themselves a lot of the time. Yeah. But I love it when a student who's also in the class comes up to me and who's maybe has potential, asks me what to do. And I'm like, man, well, think about it this way. You're in a class. You're basically going to a gym. So if you find it hard to work with that person, cool, you're lifting heavy weights. So when you do work with someone you find it easy with, like you can do whatever you want. You'll have a lot more freedom because you know what it's like to work with someone who's difficult and still do a good scene.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to frame it, is like it's tough or it's difficult. And again, regardless of whether it's malicious, unconscious, or conscious, like there can be a takeaway of like you said, it's lifting heavy weights. I like that.
But also,
and sometimes it's just chemistry,
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's fine.
Sorry,
it's all. I was just gonna when students or, fellow improvisers talk about fuck world in a educational, or like, how do I deal with this, or how do I get better at it, the internal motivation, even if we don't initially recognize it, is that we're uncomfortable and or afraid of it, because that's not how our brain works, or I don't understand how that person's brain works, and I don't know how to react to it. And it's, again, I always tell people, if they're uncomfortable with fuck world, is, like Bob said, the heavy lifting. If you're afraid of it, then do it. You have to get used to it, even if it's not your forte. You have to be able to deal with it. You have to be able to stay in it. You have to be able to react and still filter through your character, no matter what crazy shit is going on around you. And recognizing that maybe if fuck world is swirling around you, that you're the audience in the eye of the storm, right? Maybe you're the voice of the audience. Maybe you're the grounded character or whatever.
Yeah. And again, just to be able to thrive in it, you can always find your troops. And actually, I want to ask you guys this out of curiosity, because you can find your troops where you kind of play the style that you want in a more tailored way. But a lot of improv is going to be about mixing and matching. I feel like the improv community really thrives on things like jams and classes and workshops and mixers. And it's a cool thing to be able to play with other people and in that community. Just out of curiosity, how, like, do you think that there should be more, like, what if you had your way percentage wise, how often would you have like abstract, super unrealistic stuff in your improv, like all the time, half the time? Or is it just something that you're like, we most people seem to be trying to do grounded, realistic improv most or all the time, and I'm just trying to find that 10% of like spice in things? Where does it fall for you guys?
Oh, that's I really couldn't put a percentage, but like, we call it play for a reason. And sometimes I feel like playing a particular way, maybe I want to do something honest. Maybe because the night we're performing, everybody's being super silly, so I want to do something different. I think about tone a lot when I perform. Or maybe I'm just in a bad mood, so I want to do like an angry scene. Who knows?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah. It's also what you said, Bob, of like recognizing the overall tone or pace of the set we're currently doing. I couldn't put a percentage on it either. Obviously, I enjoy more. I won't say more. I enjoy going to fuck world. I enjoy doing twisted reality. I also enjoy doing just a normal, grounded scene. And like Bob said, it can be affected by, what our day was like, especially like on a Friday show when you've worked all day, probably. So you're in a much different place than a Saturday one, possibly, depending on what your work schedule is. But also in that moment, I've been in sets where I'm like, shit has been weird for the first half of this set, and we've had enough of it. So I'm going to do, I'm just going to do grounded stuff, or at least I'm going to initiate that way and hope maybe, again, spice, right? Creme brulee is great, but I wouldn't want a whole 3-course meal of creme brulee.
Yeah. You got to keep things dynamic.
Yeah.
But on that note too, like talking about play, like I don't want to play or perform in a world where I'm not challenged or surprised. So if everything's normal and we're all going to Applebee's every time, that gets boring to me. Like if there's ever a time where I walk into the theater and not feel a little bit scared because I don't know what's about to happen, then I lose my favorite drug. It's
what I've been doing. Were you going to say Ren and Stimpy? Because I want to hear what you were going to say.
No, I said it was like I was about to say like it's like riding a roller coaster. If you ride the same one over and over again, the first couple times is really thrilling because holy shit, but then you get used to it and it gets boring. So even though we're doing something unique and you know you get off stage and the audience is like, holy shit, I can't believe you did that. Like if it gets to the point like I can because I did it yesterday and the day before, you know something's got to change.
The thing that I've been doing recently is bringing oddness to a scene. I wouldn't call it fuckworldness. It can go there, but I would just call it oddness. It's like sticking your toe into the fuckworld pond. Is just entering scenes and not speaking, just being like a physical presence. Like the waiter at Applebee's, and not being like literally refusing to respond if they try to bring me into the scene, because that's not my purpose. I am just here to bring you waters. I'm not interacting with you at all. But how I do that, how I go about bringing water, how do I fill up the water pitcher in the background? How do I fill up the glasses? How do I physically react or look at the people in the scene, and just kind of be that free radical particle on the stage, and just seeing how it can feed the other people on stage without being the center of it, or even being on speaking terms, like speaking or interacting. It's just I'm there. I'm at points something the audience can focus on. I'm not stealing focus, but I'm also giving the scene some kind of new angle,
like a
that they might
backdrop or a contrast or like a context. You know what I mean? It's like anything. If your goal is not to interact or disrupt, then really all you're doing, like there's a really funny move that is probably, it's one of those things that people pull too often, a bag of tricks, but like the thing where you do a walkthrough, if somebody's having like a heated or weird conversation and you do a walkthrough and you just kind of like,
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
do that double take thing.
Yeah.
But it's such a nice way to be like, I know this conversation seems normal because we're doing an improv show, but can we just like imagine a normal ass person walking through for a moment, and then that highlights it in a way that's like, oh yeah, this is fucking weird. And I think like being those kind of backdrop ensemble characters can do that in a really nice way.
You can also use fuckworld, especially if it's like, quote unquote, I don't know what was happening, or that was fucking weird in a set. I've done moves where like a scene is just like crazy ass shit is happening. And I don't mean in a bad way. It's just a fuckworld scene. Right. And I've done some edits where I'll like edit the scene, not as a suite, but kind of like a focus deal. And I'll come on there was some weird scene at one time, and I said, wow, did you see what they had on PBS's fundraiser yesterday? That show was fucking weird. Literally commenting on the scene before it and kind of encapsulating it into this new world.
Yeah.
And
tipping your hat to it or whatever.
Yeah, but it also like that was real, right? Like that happened in this whatever context I gave it, and then we go on with the new scene. But also, if that kind of puts it in context of the show overall, and you can like reference it now or use it again, rather than just saying like, well, that was weird, let's not go back to it.
Yeah. I think that's a really great thing to do, especially if that type of scene happens with any good amount of the show left before the halfway point or early in the show. I've seen it be where like, yeah, people are like doing weird stuff, and then, and then deeper in the show, it's like there's like inside the womb of the mother, the fetuses are fighting or whatever, and then that turns out to be what the thing was, or like, it can get recontextualized in some later part of the show, and be used that way.
And that's something the audience, because they have they have the headspace to be sitting there and cataloging all this stuff far more than we can.
Oh yeah.
And they'll recognize it.
Yeah. So just to throw a couple more offers out there, if people are looking for them on what to do in Fuck World, because I have my absurdity workshop, and the last part of it was as much as we would talk about Fuck World, or absurd moments. It's like there's going to be ones that make you feel uncomfortable or kind of in that panic mode. And so the tips that I came up with for my own way of having options in those moments, because they're going to come up no matter how long you're doing it, is you can either allow it and just like let it be, not feel the need to like justify it. I think that's one really great skill that tends to be have negative side effects for people, is that like the panic and the rush to justify something weird can come up. And so just allowing it, not feeling the need to acknowledge it. Because if the waiter comes on and Gary, you pull that move and your intention is not to do anything in particular, but just to give backdrop, sometimes the knee-jerk reaction is to be like, oh, waiter, yes, it is. Yeah,
yes.
We will get you that check soon. Just let it go. The other thing you can do is adopt the weird thing. If somebody's doing something and you just don't understand where it's coming from, is just mirror it. Like, do it too.
Yeah.
Yeah. As far as justifying goes, several years ago, I came to the conclusion that in long form, not in short form, but in long form, justification more often than not equals to explanation. And we don't need it. And if I've replaced justification with acceptance, whatever you do is real and expected by my character. Doesn't matter what you do. I mean, there are exceptions. If someone walks on stage and slaps me, that's extreme, which used to happen back in the day. But yeah. But if you just accept as part of the reality of your scene, whatever happens, and you don't have to justify it. If your character accepts it as normal and real, then so does the audience. And then you skip 2 to 3 minutes of all that fucking like, really? I don't, what are you doing? Why is there wolf blood? That's the actor trying to make sense of what's happening, and nobody wants to watch that.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of the rule, right? Well, first of all, like I agree with both of you guys. Like, to act as if, like, this is, if the beginning of the scene is to try to establish the norm, and someone comes up with something really big and ridiculous, to act as, oh yeah, this is just Thursday. This is how, okay, and that. So like the base of your scene is this wild, crazy concept. Great. You can only heighten it from there. Right. And you can go on a really fun, wild ride.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you guys, so I think it's a viable option as well, but probably too often used. I would love to see people more mirroring or accepting weird choices. But I do think it's effective to acknowledge them or call them out as a straight character and play the voice of the audience. Again, as long as it's not like a habit and the way that you're dealing with it every single time as a defense, you can have a lot of fun with pointing out the weird thing of like, are you talking to your shoulder? Like,
well, right. But in doing so, you're accepting it. That it's, I accept that you're doing that, but here's my character's reaction to it. And it's not a defensive move, like you're saying, like, don't do it all the time.
Yeah. Well, you got to also decide, is this a character that always talks to his shoulder, or is today different because today's the day he discovers he talks to his shoulder, and what does that mean to the rest of us?
Yeah.
Right. And I like that move. And just as long as the person's careful not to poke holes in reality or explain the game rather than playing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I always say, like, if that move is great if you're consciously making it.
Yes.
I'm going to call you out on this because that's the move I'm choosing to make. It's not a knee jerk or defensive reaction.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, just to go back to the question I asked you guys. To be honest, right now for me, I think I would do mostly weird scenes if I was left to my own devices. I don't know if it's just something that I'm interested in lately. But Two-Man No-Show does like clown prov, and I love meta play. And I know it's not for everyone, and it's not for everyone all the time. But I really like it, and I don't know, for just throwing it out there that it's tough for me. But what you said, Bob, it's also like I don't know if that's because I'm trying to balance the plate and challenge myself into this thing that I don't get a ton of opportunity to explore. And maybe, if we were playing on a regular basis as a trio and doing more of that stuff because that's kind of the style that we ran with, maybe I would be less. It would be less of a need. But yeah, I don't know. I have a feeling that left to my own devices, if I could pick the balance, I would probably do mostly abstract, surreal stuff. And have the accent be grounded stuff.
Well, I mean, I never really did answer that question, but I would agree with what you just said. I mean, if left to my own devices, if I'm just kind of like, I just need to play tonight, and or this is what I can just do whatever I want, then I'm probably going to do weird shit. It's probably why people, pony on up to me at the bar and be like, I don't know how to deal with fuck world. Because,
Who's that? I don't know how to do it. That's a Mogwai came up to you.
Yes, it's a generic Oompa Loompa character. But yes, I mean, there's a reason the three of us decided to make a troupe, right? Like, was we wanted to explore those styles of play. And yeah, that's how I like to play. And, we've been doing it long enough that, obviously people recognize that, like, you do some weird shit, but it never seems to never seems to crash and burn as often as if I do it. Which is not to say that I don't do bad fuck world scenes, because I certainly do.
Yeah.
Well, I think a big difference is, though, Gary, when you do it, you fully commit. And I don't think a lot of people, unless they have as much stage time as you had or have, are comfortable with doing that. I think there's a fear factor in doing and purposely making a bold choice or going to fuck world, because you have to explain yourself in a way, like, or not have to, but you feel like you have to
be apologetic in some way of like, oh, yeah. I'm sorry.
And that's why I really enjoyed playing with you guys, because I never had that feeling like, oh, I have to justify why I made a move. It's just like, I don't know, my gut told me, and I was always cool with you guys.
Hey, yeah. Bob just left the stage and became a Muppet. What the fuck? Yeah. That's a true reference.
What?
That's from the
you did that in a show.
Yeah, the Michigan Theater Association.
I know you're
up in Saginaw.
I didn't realize I was a Muppet, but yeah.
That's what you are to us. Yeah.
That's what you are to me. Yep.
So yeah, but I think that's probably, like, to me, the biggest takeaway in the conversation, or like advice that I would give anyone about it, is that, like, assume there is such thing as malicious fuck world and malicious wrenches in things. Yeah, I think it's the job of teachers and coaches and institutions to, I'll just put that disclaimer on it, is like, that's how those things are supposed to be ironed out. Otherwise, assume the best intentions in the people you're playing with. So at the very least, you put yourself in a better position to accept those offers, and you don't have that knee-jerk reaction that might put somebody who's playing in an unusual way feeling apologetic or unsupported, and then it's a balance game from there.
And honestly, I think we should just come up with a different term when someone's being malicious rather than calling it fuck world. Because I think I think when people ask, how do you deal with somebody in fuck world, maybe 75% of the time it's someone who's just not a good listener. And because they're not a good listener, they add something that's not cohesive with what's been established. To me, like the way Gary does fuck world, like you said, you have a strong establishment, and then he puts a twist to it. Like, for example, if you do establish who you are to each other, and maybe what makes a day difference, changing the location heightens the scene, but doesn't negate everything that's been established.
Right.
So,
Yeah, that's okay. So we'll this will maybe be the last subtopic, and then we got to start wrapping it up. But yeah, maybe we didn't really touch on purely confusing things that, like, you're like, oh man, this person just said they're, the traveling doctor. This person came in and called him mom. This next person came in and called him dad.
Oh, you mean when people aren't listening? Okay.
Yeah. So you're in a scene. Do you guys have advice for and I'll tell you right now, and again, this is not for everyone, but my honest advice is make it worse. Like if it's getting confusing and things are stacking up in this way, that's just like, none of this is harmonizing, make it worse. But what do you guys think?
But that's accepting all of it, right?
Yeah,
you're not trying to justify it. You're just accepting it.
Whoever did that established a pattern of not listening and adding weird stuff. I would add so much gasoline to that dumpster fire and let's just go with it. Let's just see where it goes. And maybe through adding all this stuff, we'll get something we can actually use.
Because I guess you're taking unconscious and making it conscious. And again,
that probably just becomes what the scene is, right? It just becomes a pile-on until somebody edits.
Yeah, and maybe that's not the way it's got to go. But again, it's got a better chance. Because in my mind, this is what's happening: is that scene starts. There's something going on, but things haven't been established, and then somebody tries to establish information, who, what, where, and then something else confusing happens, and something that contradicts that, and even if you're on the outside or inside of it, being like, I see what everyone thinks is happening, and I don't think anyone thinks there's anything wrong, but you're kind of in the audience perspective of this is all contradicting itself in different ways.
I don't even think that's fuck world. Playing in fuck world is like a twist on reality, or oddness and weird choices. When people aren't listening, that's just the bad scene.
That's not improv. That's just
Yeah. I mean, to call that fuck world, like Bob was saying, we should have another name, and I'm going to call it bad scene.
Bad scene world, yeah.
Bad scene USA.
World. Welcome to bad scene.
I mean, if people aren't listening and relabeling people, and the most common one is when someone's playing opposite gender, and someone comes in and calls them by their own gender identified pronoun, and then that's almost 80% of what happens. It's because you're not listening, or you just default to, now we're about to take a turn into gender world, which we don't need to do, but that happens more often than not, and then people call that fuck world. I'm like, that's not fuck world. That's just bad play.
Yeah,
you're not listening.
Contradictory and confusing stuff, often the result of not listening. And I guess, I'm wondering. I think that making it worse is an active choice. And that sometimes it can be viewed internally as why is James throwing wrenches and things? And again, I think I would hope that people assume the best intentions in whatever I'm doing, because
but that's a conscious choice you're making based on what's happening in the scene, as opposed to not doing anything or reacting as the actor, or trying to justify all that. You can't.
Do you think it's a good enough option too, though, to just like keep your head down and wait for the edit? Is that also just like, ride it out?
No, because I mean,
sometimes
it's your job to add, and honestly, we call it play.
Yeah.
So if they're not playing by the rules, then the new rules, there are no rules. So
yes, that's what I'm saying.
Hey man, I'm yes-anding your choice not to do good improv.
But
let's
also
see where it goes.
That's also part of playing in fuck world, though, right? And that's why some people have problems with it, is because you learn the rules, and then as you go, part of the thing with fuck world, and we're not talking about bad scene work or not listening. We're talking about a twisted reality is, what are the rules of this scene and the world it's being played in? And then you have to learn the rules and then play by those new rules.
Yeah.
Right. And that's, I think, the most confusing and hardest part to learn about fuck world, is that in this microcosm of the scene, it has its own rules and you have to play by them and discover them as you go. And remember them and play by them. Yeah. It's a whole nother layer. And once you can do that, and again, a lot of it is just experience, and not being afraid to do it, diving into fuck world in a conscious, unconscious, non-malicious way, and discovering that, like, oh, in this world, this means that. And so now we're going to play with that. It's like a short form game of like synonym. What is that? Synonym role, right?
Yeah,
where like things
role.
replace the other. That's really what fuck world is, right? At its core, yeah. We've changed the reality in this world, and now play by it. Don't
substituting
fight it.
Truth. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, every time we should think about when you go into a scene, unless you're using the get as, an absolute, you start with nothing. So everything should be world building. You right. got to build your character, you just have to do it really fast, and then hopefully along the way discover stuff, and that's the process, right? So again, I don't think fuck world is that crazy. I think people just aren't comfortable with doing something that they're not familiar with, or right. you're not, or lacking control. Because usually, if it's a person who doesn't mind playing fuck world and someone who's heady or likes to play more realistic, they feel out of control or lack of thereof.
Yeah.
Okay. Final survey. Jenna, this is just purely curious, because also just to flip it on ourselves. I know that I'm guilty of being the person who wasn't listening. Nobody's perfect.
Oh, yeah.
And so I'm thinking in our scenario of like, I do something that's contradictory or confusing or whatever. And it's honestly my fault for just not paying good enough attention. Would you, if you're in that situation, you're the person guilty of not listening, would you rather be playfully called out about it, or have it be ignored and pushed through? I would rather be playfully called out about it, honestly, and that's partially because I have a penchant for going meta, so like I'm down with that. But what about you guys? Both same?
Oh yeah,
because it's obvious to everybody in the room. So why not? Because if it's just hanging over the scene the whole time, that's all the audience is thinking. So if it gets called out, we can move past that, fix it, go further.
Yeah.
Yeah. Call it out, accept it, or fix it, whatever happens. I also have a penchant for meta-ness, and sometimes it's improv, right? We can do whatever we want. And people get so freaked out when I do this. Well, not everybody, but sometimes people are like, what are you doing? Where like shit like that will happen, like you've mislabeled something, and I'll literally like, it's like an aside in Shakespeare, right? I'll literally like step away from my character and I'll step down stage and look directly at the audience, be like, I wasn't listening. I'll literally label all my mistakes and physically step back into my character and have the scene continue.
I love that. I love that. That's so great.
Yeah.
Not for everybody, but this is preaching to the choir here.
I mean, that's fuck world right now. So
yeah, I love it. I do, because it's fun. It's fun because I forgot who said this to me, and actually is something I've been really playing with for the last year or so. The art of improv, the content of the scene isn't what's interesting; is the process of making it. Which is more interesting. So if you can take a sidestep and do that, like you're kind of showing the process. It's like watching someone paint a picture. Like I don't know how to paint, but when my girlfriend paints something and she's explained to me like the technique, it's interesting. I could just enjoy the picture of her doing it, but like her, taking a side step and like, oh, I'm holding the brush this way to create this line. Cool. And I think if we're doing it that way and it's playful and it's still entertaining, because that's our other job as an improviser, to entertain, then I don't see anything wrong with it. And if it gets everything moving, if it adds to the momentum of the scene, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can have a whole nother conversation on meta improv for sure.
Oh, yes. We can have another conversation.
Yes.
Can I add? I know we're almost near the end.
Go for it.
I'm going to add one more aspect of Fuck World that really throws people into knots is when we start messing with time.
Okay.
Because keeping track of a timeline on top of keeping track of everything else can really throw a wrench for people. And that's not to say like I'm perfect at it either, but getting people to recognize that the scene you're initiating or the scene that you're doing took place prior to the scene that you did earlier, like trying to establish something, often gets labeled as, oh, fuck world. Because
it feels contradictory to something that's already been established.
Right, because people
being linear.
Yeah, people are coming from a linear standpoint and not recognizing the elements that you might be dropping or referencing to really show that, like, I'm taking the scene back in time or forward in time. It's not a new scene, and it's not like I'm being weird. It's a time element, which I think is an aspect of play that doesn't get a lot of time, no pun intended, spent on in classes, because it's one of those elements that's just really hard to do, and that often gets labeled as fuck world, which again, kind of like not listening, is not really fuck world. It's just missed opportunity.
But I think it could be a fascinating way to play because, like, think about like Marvel movies and stuff. Usually the top grossing ones is like the origin story. So if you could show like an origin of a weird character, or why this was a choice, or what led up to this, I think that can be a lot of fun.
Top grossing is the group scene at the end called Avengers Endgame.
Endgame.
Giant
building
group
up
scene.
to it, baby. I mean,
third beat here. They're great. So
end beat.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, time's a huge part of storytelling, and in terms of fuck world, that stuff or other moves that are just unconventional, anything that you throw at me that opens my mind to a different way of playing or making moves or storytelling, I'm grateful for, even if it sends me in a tailspin the first time that I see it. So my mentality is bring it on. And I don't know. I hope that we've given a little bit of credit and appeal to some positive aspects of fuck world. And
at the end of the day, if you're like an improviser and you this is your thing and you want to keep doing it, and you have troops and you're auditioning for theater teams and like resident casts or whatever, it's a style of play that you have to be at least able to cope with if it's not your thing, and just because you don't like something or something doesn't make sense or I didn't like that scene doesn't mean it's bad fuck world. It's a style of play, just like grounded play, just like patient play, just like absurd play. Games, Herald games, openers, they all have their own basis of reality and style of play, and this is just another one, and you have to be cognizant of that and at least be open to accepting and playing within the context of this weird fucking world that drives you insane.
Yeah, well said.
Nailed it.
Okay, guys, that's our conversation on Fuck World. Gary, thanks for joining us for the convo. And
thanks, buddy.
Miss you guys.
Thanks
Good
for
talking
asking.
to you. Yeah. Catch you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.